straightforward and easy workflow for SDXL in Comfyui. If you want to use that right away, just go download it from the given link and get started. And if you want to learn how you can craft such workflows yourself and how they actually work, then stick around a bit longer for that. Let's shoot up your Comfyui UI. You can all start working from the default workflow that gives a very good base to start. Here we first try to understand what each of these nodes actually do. This load checkpoint node loads your checkpoint. I have the SDXL base and refiner models available here. Clip node, this yellow colored one, goes to text encoder. You can set as many text encoders as you want in this step. In the default workflow, there are two, one for the positive text and one for the negative text. Let's change the color so you can understand it better. Now, these clips go into the sampler where they merge with the model. Two yellow connectors, one goes into the negative point, one goes into the positive point of the sampler. Now, if you go back to the checkpoint node, here the model goes from here to the sampler. Now you have to put the image dimensions and image numbers. There comes in the empty latent image node. Here you can change the width and height and batch size, that how many images you want generated at once, and that goes into the latent image part of K-sampler. Now as all the ingredients are together, you have to decode them to actually generate the image. One connector goes from K-sampler to VAE decode, and we get to see another connector that comes from the checkpoint model to the VAE decode and connects the VAE nodes together. It's pretty straightforward from there. VAE decoder decodes the information and generates the image, and it goes to a save image node to save the image locally. But as I mentioned, SDXL is not one model but a combination of two models that runs simultaneously. So let's just make a copy of this entire workflow and then merge it together with this one to create a combined model. You can copy any of those checkpoints just by pressing Alt, left click and drag, but there is a little bit change in that. This time we are not using that empty latent image, rather we are pulling the latent image from that previous K-sampler. That way the image generated with the base model runs through this workflow and the refiner gets applied on it instead of working standalone. So we just pull a connector from latent part of K-sampler to the latent image of this K-sampler. Now if we remove this VAE decode and save image nodes from the very first workflow, it would still generate the same image with the refiner model, but I prefer to keep them on because in that way I get two images generated simultaneously, one with the refiner and one without the refiner, because in some cases I tend to prefer the image generated without the refiner, though very little, but it's good to have that option. And if we get a look at that image generated without the refiner, we can use different settings for the refiner again and again to get an image that suits our needs. Now let's get started. Here in the previous K-sampler, the steps are 20 steps, and for the refiner model I tend to use 5 steps in the beginning and then build up from there. Denoise. Let's start with a 10% strength of denoising, because if we use too much denoising, the refiner model changes the image a lot and makes it a completely different image from the one generated by the base model. So that's why I start from 10% and build up from there. I'll be using the same prompt for both the base model and the refiner model, setting the image dimension to 1024 by 1024 because that's what works best with SDXL, and hit Q prompt and our images are generated. You can put them side by side to see the refiner model does a splendid job. In this case, the image generated with the base model seems to lacking some details and not really perfect one, but the refiner model makes it a wonderful image. Now let's just add another final ingredient to the recipe, the SDXL offset loader. Right click here, add node loaders, load loader. How the loader works is that the checkpoint model goes through the loader to the sampler, and that's how the loader model is applied. We detach this clip points, and from the checkpoint model the clip goes to the loader, and from that loader model the clip connectors go back to the positive and negative prompt. Similarly, we detach the checkpoint model from sampler and send it to the loader model. From the loader node the model goes to K-sampler with the LoRa model applied on the checkpoint model, and it's the same from there. Here you can see the SDXL offset LoRa is already installed and applied. You can set the model strength from here. I am setting it to somewhere around 50% right now, and Q prompt. You can see which node is working by the green border around that. Now this time I set the batch size to 6 to show how you can generate multiple images at once, and the images are generated here. If you are new to world of stable diffusion and want to learn how you can install Comfyui in 3 simple steps, then you should definitely watch this video on my left. And if you want to learn how you can use the refiner extension in automatic 1111 and use a much more comfortable web UI, then you should definitely watch this video on my right.